Dr. Renata Veroneze. Dr. Veroneze is a professor of animal breeding and genetics at the Federal University of Viçosa in Brazil. Currently, she's a visiting researcher at the University of Georgia, working on new methodologies for pig genomic prediction. Overall, her research focuses on genetic parameter estimation, quantitative genetics, genotype by environment interaction, and genomic prediction for complex traits. In addition, she's interested in the use of new and/or automated recorded phenotypes in beef cattle and pig breeding. The Animal Breeding Group Lab at UFB has experience with different species, including dairy and beef cattle, pigs, goats, quail, and rabbits. So thank you for joining us. Dr. Veroneze, I'll give the floor over to you.
So thank you very much. I am really happy to be here today. So your group is really known by its experience and knowledge on animal breeding. And also we have a long time relationship between Guelph and with our university. So I had many students that spent some time in Guelph. Probably you know some of them, like Luis and Naya. So it's a really pleasure to be here. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about feed efficiency. But first I would like I know that you had Simone talking some weeks ago, and she already explained where Viçosa is and talk a little bit about our university, but I would like to also introduce the other members of our group. Paulo Savio, he is also a professor on animal breeding and genetics of our university. Professor Simone, I think you already know from some weeks ago, myself, and we also have two new professors, Delvan, that works a lot on genomic evaluation, longitudinal data, and also Daniele, that works with genetics, genomic evaluation, GWAS, and other omics. So I consider that we have kind of young team. So Delvan and Daniele joined us in the last year as professors, and we have some experience on data analysis. Our focus is mainly on genetic evaluation, genomic prediction, GWAS, and other omics. And as was said in my introduction, we work with several species. Also, an important part of our team is our students and the collaborations that we have with other universities. Also, we have currently two postdocs, Eula and Alessandra. We have around 9 bachelor undergrad students involved in our projects. We have 5 master students and 14 PhD students in animal breeding and genetics. So our idea is now expand a little bit. Then Daniele and Delvan is just starting, getting new students for working on their projects. So our expectation is increase a little bit the number of master and PhD students in the next years. We usually work really well integrated, which means that what I will present here is not my work, but the work of our team, Daniele and Delvan, Paulo. They are all participating as co-advisor and working on the papers that on the projects that I will present. So, just to summarize, our group have basically interest on genome prediction and GWAS, phenomics, genetic parameter estimation, transcriptomics and proteomics, genetic evaluation, and also studies on genotype by environment interaction. So, but now I will really start my talking. So, my idea is present our projects on feed efficiency. We don't have that many results yet, so I'll present the results from Pedro that worked with beef cattle feed efficiency. But the idea is present what is going on and also engaging on the talk stimulation, stimulate some conversation about this that I think that is a really important and interesting talk. So I will start talking a little bit how all these targets of making the animals more efficient and talk a little bit about the diverse trait definitions that we have. We'll talk about how we are exploring the data that we're recording for the animals on feed efficiency. I'll talk just a little bit about the project that we have on genotype by environment influencing feed efficiency, and also end with take-home messages. So to start, as I said in the title, this is a word target. If you start to looking for papers talking about feed efficiency and the importance of feed efficiency for animal production, we're going to see papers from the forest, of course, that papers with few number of animals using ANOVA to estimate genetic parameters, but it was already there. So we have papers talking that selection for efficiency is important and that we should include those traits on our breeding programs. I bring some example papers on swine, pigs, beef cattle, dairy cattle. So my message here is that there is interest on selection on feed efficiency for a long time, but of course we have some difficulties for executing this selection effectively. And just recently, you can see it being incorporated in selection index. So, but since the 90s, and we have some papers already saying that now we are able to select it for feed efficiency. So we have this paper from Peter in 1995 that's already talking about automatic feeding system for feed consumption control in pigs, and we have this paper, for example, from Arthur in 2001 talking about already the use of automated system also for cattle. So which means that we have like putting in the 2000s, we have about 20 years that we are already able to select for feed efficiency. But as said before, we just have recently starting to including those traits as in our selection indexes in cattle. So in pig, we started, of course, in pig and poultry, we started long time ago. So it's already some years, many years, let's say, that they are recording and selecting for feed efficiency, but for cattle is really recently including on the selection index, despite we know the importance of these traits. Because if you ask for pig producers in Brazil and maybe here also have, I think, which is the most important trait for them, it's feed efficiency or feed conversion, because it's really impacts how profitable will be their production. And also when now it's gaining more and more importance because of the environmental concern. So we have this increase in environmental concern, and it's make that feed efficiency much more important now than like 10, 20 years ago. If you start to dig into the papers from those, like say, 20 years or 30 years of papers, we're going to see many definitions for and selection criteria proposed for selection for feed intake. We can have the more traditional ones, let's say feed efficiency itself, that will be weighting gain divided by feed intake, feed conversion, that will be feed intake divided by weight again. But we have some criticism about those measurements because when we select, for example, for feed conversion, it's related to adult body weight. And then if you increase the size of the animals or the adult body weight, we're going to have great demand for nutrients. Also because it's a rate, and when we can have an animal that is really good on feed conversion, and but it's because it has low weight gain. So in Brazil, we have this problem when they start to do the tests for measure feed efficiency. They start to focus, some producers start to focus on phenotype selection, let's say in this way. It's not really genetic evaluation because genetic was just incorporated recently, but they are using the test results for choosing animals, and it was basically feed conversion. So, but they could have some animals that are efficient, but doesn't have really good weight gain. So the animals that are not the best for the system, let's say in this way. So, and then what we saw is the return, I will say, interest on residual feed intake. I'll say the return because residual feed efficiency is not new. If you saw the paper that proposed it, it's from the 1963, and if you go back, we're going to see that in 90s they have some studies on residual feed intake, and now we have the growth of studies on residual feed intake again, and the use of residual feed intake. The basic idea behind residual feed intake is that we're going to have the observed feed intake minus the expected feed intake, or minus all the energy sinks that we have in the animal production system. We can also have observed residual weight gain that can be defined as observed weight gain and expected weight gain. When I'm thinking about expected feed intake, you can imagine that we can have many definitions about how is the expected feed intake, or how are the energy sinks that you account for computing residual feed intake. I could have the classical stuff like here my energy sinks will be body weight, that is accounting for maintenance energy. I could have average daily gain. This is the most basic equation, which means that in this equation the residual will be your residual feed intake measurement. Here I have the observed feed intake. It's a regression in function of body weight and average daily gain. So then we can make this regression and obtain the residual feed intake. But of course, this is, let's say, kind of the simpler way to take an account for energy sink. I could argue, but back fat, like in this other equation, is also consuming energy, and I should take account for this. I could say that muscle deposition also demands energy, and I should take it into account. So I could include it also loy area, for example, here. So if you're thinking about which is the energy sinks, we could have included many and complicate this equation, and we could have many definitions. So, which means that if you are adjusting for different things, we are changing a little bit the traits that we're measuring. This is one aspect. The other aspect is the measurement itself. Of course, that the associations put some rules for measurements of the animals, but we see a lot of difference. For example, if you go to the American Angus Association, the test duration will be, if I'm not wrong, 45 days, something like this. If you go to the Brazilian association, we have long tests, will be 80 days. If you're thinking about dairy cattle, what we're going to measure, we're going to measure the entire lactation, which will be the phase, what we should do. So for how long we could record those animals. Same for beef cattle. So is it 80 days, 45 days enough for us to select the best animals for the most efficient animals? So we can have different definitions also in the period that we're gonna recording, and also in the processing, because now we are using the automatic feeders, and we have do some processing in the data. We have some, like say, some data that was not correct collected. We have to clean this data, and you have some, we can put some noise on it. So if you see the papers, like in body weight, for instance, you can see papers using body weight in the beginning of the test, body weight, in the end of the test, body weight, in the middle of the test. So we have many ways to compute this residual feed intake. Which is the best? So I will not have this answer, but I think we still have some working on it. As I said, so if you saw the scenario in Brazil, we have already selection for residual feed intake incorporated on their selection index for Gene Plus and the NCP. And they use the basic equation that will be the simpler one, considering body weight and average daily gain. If you go to American Angus Association, you're gonna have selection criteria, residual weight gain. If you go to Australia, we have net feed intake. For the Angus Association, we can have feed saved for dairy. If you go, so my focus here is not dairy cattle, but also Canadian hosting cattle, that I know that the group from Gulf is involved in development of selection for better, efficient, more efficient animals. And what they are using now, they do genomic evaluation for the weights, the metabolic body weight, energy correct milk, and dry marrow intake. That's two different periods of the lactation. 5 to 6 divided in two periods, let's say this way. And then the GBVs of dry marrow intake, they made a reparameterization and give a measure of feed efficiency that will be genetically independent of energy corrected, milk energy corrected, and metabolic body weight. So because one of the advantages, I didn't say this, but why people propose residual feed intake? Because it will be phenotypically independent of the body weight, for example. So we're gonna have not the selection for residual feed intake will not impact the adult size of the animal. But when using this way, in this concept is like phenotypically, and in the Canadian Hosting Association proposal is we have really a residual feed intake genetically independent of body weight, for example. Then we guarantee that the selection will not increase body weight with better properties. And also we could have one-step analysis that is basically what we did in Pedro's paper, that is adding residual feed intake equation terms as covariables in animal model. So the idea here is reinforce that residual feed intake will be dry marrow intake adjusted. So then we have like feed intake, our equation will be the adjustment of feed intake or observation. We have all the fixed effects that we use for genetic evaluation. Then we're gonna have as covariable body weight and average daily gain. And also we include the animal handler effects and the other under effects that we want or we should include in the model plus residue. So we could continue here, like say the entire meeting just talking about different measurements of residual feed intake, because there is many papers there are other new proposals about how to select it for the best or the most efficient animals uh, in livestock production. But so I will stop by here talking about the definitions, just to get an idea that we can change a lot the trait that we are working on, and it's not clear which is the best to be done yet. And also, other thing that we can observe is that many breeding programs using only the averages. Which means that they require dry matter intake during 80 days, let's say in this case for beef cattle in Brazil, and in the end I average the dry matter intake of 80 days, and I considering just also the body weight gain is just a regression or some average of the entire period. So I'm not exploring the fact that I have repeated records for each animal. This also happened in pig breeding. They usually collected data from growing to finishing. They start around 9 days and they go until 140, 150 days. So they have a long period of data collection, but in the end, they use just a summary of this data. And we know that we have big differences, for instance, in growing for pigs from the growing period. We can have really different feed efficiency than when we saw to the finishing period, for example. That's when the animal is already had a fat deposition and slowing the growth. So thinking about using better the information that is recorded every day. So Pedro worked with genomic analysis for feed efficiency traits in beef cattle using regression models. So this is a paper from his thesis that will be published in the next weeks. It was just accepted for publication. In this paper, we used the phenotypic records from 3,000 animals collected in an 84-day feed efficiency test. We had also 4,500 genotype animals. And what we use here, it was random regression models to evaluate the different feed efficient traits. And these random regression models, we tested legendary and splines with homogeneous and heterogeneous residual variance. And here also we used what I said before, that is including, we use like for residual feed intake, we use feed intake and the body weight and the average daily gain as co-variables in our model. So, and the best model that so around all the models evaluated, the best one was the B splines within 7 nodes and 6 classes of residual variance. And here I'm showing the irritability of dry matter intake. We can see that we have fluctuations on irritability. It's between, let's say, 0.10 and 0.008 and 0.8 and 0.018, the irritability for dry matter feed intake, but it has quite a lot of variations. We observe more variations in residual feed intake, mainly in the 42 days, we could not really explain why we have this peak of irritability on 42 days. What we saw is a little bit higher permanent environment variance here in the beginning of the test. We also have the same graphs for body weight gain that we can see also a fluctuation. So it's inside what we expected between 0.12 until 0.28, 30, but we also see a lot of fluctuations on the irritability along the test. So also for residual weight. So which means that if you estimated breathing values in different parts of our curve, we could have different genetic gains or outcomes if you apply this as selection criteria. Like if I take 42 days for calculating GBVs for residual weight gain, it will be a different than if I take this like 14 days for compute the residual weight gain ABV. So we have different outcomes. But the most interesting results of Pedro papers was the correlations. We have here the correlations of dry matter intake. For dry matter intake, we can see that it's fluctuated, but in general, we have all positive correlations between the first, I have the first day, 7 day, 14 day, then I go week by week, computing the genetic correlations between different days for the same traits. And we can see that, of course, that is reduced along the test from the first day, but in general, it's all positive. And if you take this end of the test, we can see pretty high correlations from the 63 days and so on. So we have all above 0.8 of correlations here. For residual feed intake, we can see some negative correlations here around between the days, and just here it's a bit slower correlations in the end of the test, but we still have positive correlations. But we're going to see that this was caused mainly for average daily gain, because for average daily gain, we have this unexpected, let's say in this way, results, because we have like a block from positive correlations between day 1 until day 21, and then we have negative correlations. We can see that day 1 has negative correlation for day 28 until day 84. And this was an unexpected result, because we think in the beginning that body weight will be a more easy trait and will be more stable across the entire test, but it was not what we observed. So, and we can see a stabilization like in this end of the test that will be from 49 days until the end. Then we have high correlations again, really high ones. But when you look to here, so our hypothesis for this is that we doesn't have enough adaptation period, because they use an adaptation period. So here I have 21 days of adaptation period that is not included in this data. But what we see in the tests in Brazil is that the test is all done in the same farm, and the animals from different farms are taken to the place of the test. And those farms that the animals come from are quite different. So we have some pasture bases, we have some properties that already have some creep feeding for the animals. We have different like farm conditions, and we think that it could impact the adaptation period. So looks like we should have a larger adaptation period for those animals, because maybe there is some compensatory gain in the beginning of the test that it was not only in this first 21 days. We know that, so 21 days is a pretty like established thing. It's like a golden standard for the evaluations, but most of the students consider it as the, let's say, the rooming adaptation to a new diet. And I am not sure if the papers considering that we are getting animals from different environments and bringing them together, and we can have different compensatory gains that spend from more than 20 days, or different changes in the social also environment could also be implication that we didn't, when we're talking about 21 adaptation days, we do not talking about 21 social adaptation days. We have to remember here that in the dry matter intake in recording is one equipment. The animal, it's like the growth safe, the one that we use in Brazil, and the scale is in the is together with the water. So the scale is separated from the 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 bunk for the feed intake. So it's different from pigs that we have the same equipment to take the weight of the animal. So we have the scale and the feed intake recorded at the same time. Here we could have some differences in adaptation to the feed bunker and also to the scale also. And of course, this impacts the computation of residual feed intake. We probably cause some low correlations in this part of the or results, and also impacts the residual weight gain that's directly related to body weight gain. And we also see the same thing, low correlations from residual weight gain collected in the beginning with the end of the test. And what we show here is that it impacts the selection. So here, for handle regression, we also have to define which will be our selection criteria. Because, like say, for dairy cattle, we use handle regression for milk production, and it's pretty standardized what we're gonna use. We're gonna use like 3 or 5 lactation days, and this will be there is already standardized which how will be computed the GBV for, or the breeding value for the milk production. But for when we use handle regression for residual feed intake, for example, we could thinking about which will be or standard for selection. Here we proposed, but I'm not sure if it's the best thing. We propose we average all GFVs along the test. So I have here a comparison between a GBV computed used just average from the week 1 and the average during the entire test. And also here, this is Spearman correlation to see the change of the rank. And also in using just the first 2 weeks and the whole test and so on. So until arriving the 11th week and the whole test. What we see is that if you use data from at the beginning of the test to select the animals, we're gonna have a really, really different rank from if you use data from the entire test. We can see that just from the 9 week that we have high, the 10 week in advance that we have correlations all above 0.9 for 1% of the animal, 5%, and 10%. So it means that we basically, if you use like one of the first, let's say, 30 days or 3-4 weeks of test, we're gonna not select the same animals if you use data from the entire test. The same for, and much more evident for body weight gain, that we basically only have records correlations above 0.9 for all percentages in week 11. So we are showing that the way that we compute the GBVs, and if you consider 1 week, 2 week, we could change a lot of the animals that will be selected. And also there was a question about, could we, like Angus, use 45 days? Could we also in Brazil reduce the number of days of the animals are in test? Because of course, if you reduce the number of days, we could increase the number of records that we have. So, but it looks like we need a longer period, mainly because of those genetic correlations. So this is the first paper that we got about this data on residual feed intake in Brazil for Nelore cattle. And what we intend to go now is to investigate deep the causes of low genetic correlation. So we have here a hypothesis that could be not enough adaptation period, but you have to, like say, dig deep to say, to confirm our hypothesis and say that it's really because of adaptation period, and then we could propose which will be better for Brazilian situation. We also want to evaluate multi-trait and repeatability models. We know that under regression is really good, but when we start to have big data, maybe it become not so, can be like slow for convergence and so on. Then we could, or to get the GBVs, then we could test more simple model like multi-trait and the repeatability. We also want to investigate it if there is some differences on the data process of body weight gain for computing residual feed intake, mainly because of these correlations. Also, we can see like if we can slice the data different, have different ways to compute the body weight gain and see how it impacts the residual feed intake and also residual weight gain. And also try to put some thinking on which will be the best selection criteria if you are using under regression model. So you're gonna average ABVs for the entire period. We're gonna use what we're gonna do. So this is something that we'd like to continue investigation. So I forgot to mention something important. All this work on Pedro thesis was done in a partnership with Embrapa, GenePlus. So Gilberto was Pedro's co-advisor, and this is data from Embrapa, and we have a really good partnership with them that we hope that we can continue investigating this topic. So change a little bit, but still how we explore the data that we are collecting. We also have, when we are collecting residual, like not residual, but feed intake in automatic feeding system, we also recording some behavior traits that we're gonna see that we have not used those traits as selection criteria, and maybe it could help in the for feed efficiency traits. I bring this, this is a really recent paper using Nelore. This is a group from Unesp in Brazil. This is a group from Unesp in Brazil, and they take some measurements of behavior, because this behavior data is already there. All animals that we have feed intake measurement in the automatic bunkers, we have feed behavior data. So then they recorded, they evaluate some traits. I just take the main ones, so the height correlating. Here we can see in the diagonal the irritability of the traits. You can see that it's moderated irritable, but we have some, of course, residual feed intake and dry mare intake has high correlated, but we have some pretty good correlation with, for example, meal duration, 0.64 with residual feed intake and minus 0.33 with like consumption rate. And so we could take some advantages of correlated traits. And also there is some idea that we could maybe recording like times of visiting, something like this, or using other devices instead of the feed bunkers, because the feed bunkers are quite expensive yet. And if you could do this using cameras, for instance, recording this behavior, we could do this in a larger number of animals, and then it would effectively help us on selection for feed efficiency. I bring also this paper from Dericals, so I think it's from 2022 from Cavani, and he showed something similar. If you see here residual feed intake in this last line, we can see pretty good correlations with intake per meal, 0.65, with feed rate per visit and feed rate per meal. So we also have some good correlations with residual feed intake when we consider, and also with dry mare intake, because the way that, for instance, Canada uses dry mare intake, we can see intake per visit, intake per meal, feeding rate per visit, and feeding meal, all correlated with dry mare intake. So maybe we could use some of those traits and try to make like an index to improve the selection for efficiency of the animals. Here is the same idea, but using pig data. We can see in pigs higher editability here for those behavior traits. And here I have the correlations of those behavior traits with some traditional, like average daily gain, feed conversion, residual feed intake. We can see that like median feed intake per visit and median feed rate per visit have pretty good correlations with feed conversion, and also median feeding, and also with residual gain. This is the last one. We have 0.39 and minus 0.41 here, with number of visits per day and feed intake per visit. So number of visitors per day, it's a pretty good trait to thinking about, because as I said before, it could be easily recorded in large groups of animals using like cameras or something like this, because it's basically identify animal and count how many times it goes to the feeder. And then this could be recorded in other ways that we could also use to as traits to help on selection for efficiency. And what we see now is that is increasing the number of papers on those topics, but still we have few papers. So few studies on feeding behavior. And Aricia is a student, is a PhD student at Viçosa, and she will working on this. She will work on genetic patterns for feed intake and feed behavior traits. She used data recorded in Brazil we're going to have genotype and phenotype in animals from growing to finished data. And the idea in the beginning is estimate genetic parameters using different models, a little bit similar what Pedro did, use multi-trait repeatability models, dividing the growing finish phases and see how correlated those measurements are. And also she worked in a second project that will be genotype environment interaction for feed intake and feeding behavior. So we basically don't have that much papers on it. And here in Brazil, we have a little bit different system because our barns are kind of open. We don't have the temperature control like we have here in the United States or in Canada. In Brazil, it's more like, say, you have less control of the temperature inside the barn, then the barn fluctuates much more with the outside temperature. Then what we're gonna do is use NASA power data to collect temperature and humidity data for the farm location. And so we're going to use reaction arm approach to estimate, to see if there is genotype by environment interaction for some feed intake, for feed efficiency traits and feed behavior. So the idea here is to make the regression in function of the TAI. And also, so here it's more general projects. Daniele is the one that's the leader of this. We are doing a renewal for pig breeding farm. We have a facility for experimentation in pig in Viçosa, and we are making the renewal of this facility. The idea is to build something to collect new phenotypes, work with new phenotypes, with phenomics. We already have budget for buying automatic feeders, camera, and other sensors. And the idea is to have all this installed until like the middle of the next year. The idea is try to collect these genotypes, these phenotypes on our farmer, and where we can have higher control and you can collect many and you can have collect many other phenotypes also. We also have a slaughterhouse facility, then we could start it like collecting from growing, finishing, and also going until the slaughter of the animals, measure fat and all measure meat quality and many other traits. And the idea is, of course, genotype all animals and build a database that can make us investigate better, not only feed efficiency, but also how could you use sensors, cameras for recording animal breeding in genetics. So as take-home messages, I would say that feed efficiency is an old target. Like say we talking about this since the 40s, but we still have a lot of work to be done. And also the environmental agenda is on. I think everyone should be aware that we will invest a lot of money on this, and feed efficiency is really important. Also, when we're thinking about pigging, we start to thinking more at the tailor, like saying this way, we need nitrogen efficiency, for example, phosphorus efficiency, because we have to reduce environmental impact of our activities, and we have to start to think how or we are already late maybe, but thinking how animal breeding can help on the environmental agenda. And also I would say that technology is on board, which means that I see that we're going to have an increase on the use of automated phenotyping and in the farms for management, but also we could have more big data and automate phenotypes from for animal breeding genetics. And you have to thinking about how technology can help us to make the animals more efficient, productive, and reduce the impact of the environment. So with this, I end my presentation. I would welcome you to visit our website to learn a little bit more about DZO, about our department, and about our university. Our university is open for our students exchange. So if someone is interested to spend some time at Brazil, at Viçosa, we can talking about this. Exchange is really important for us. We are really enthusiastic to receive students from other universities, and our group is really is really open, and they really like to have contact with people from other universities. And also, so if you last year we have Flavio in our university to get a talking on our symposium, and next year we're gonna have again the symposium. So I think it is a good opportunity to visit Viçosa, visit Brazil. We don't have the entire agenda yet, but we are prepared something really nice with good speakers, and it will happen on 14, 15 of November. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Veroneze. We will now open the floor for questions. So if anyone has any questions or comments or discussion, you can feel free to raise your hands and turn on your microphones. Or if you would like, you can also enter your questions into the chat and I could read them out as well. So I can start with one. I know you talked about automated recording of phenotypes, and you mentioned the feeding behavior. Are there any other upcoming technologies that you're interested in for feed efficiency that might hold some good promise?
I would say that we have promises on cameras to have more, like say, also to recording like behavior, and also because there is some students also showing that the behavior influences a lot the feed efficiency of a group. So this, I think cameras will be also good for us to see animals interactions, to include also social effects in the model. Then we could see which are the animals that are bothering each other and avoiding they go to the feeder and something like this. Because in farms, commercial farms, we're gonna have like big groups of animals, and then this social interacts really damages the like say the feed efficiency, could really damage.
Yeah. Yeah, for the measurements. Yeah, I was wondering, yeah, how would you kind of account for that for animals that may be stressed or have disease or something like that that would affect its feeding behavior? How do you kind of account for that in your data?
Yeah, and also we have like this also use, like I think the automated data, we have a lot of different uses for this, because we could like have the resilience measuring from automated records. The variation in feed intake could give us idea about the resilience of the animals, and could also another phenotype be related to feed efficiency of the animals, because of course I don't want that the animal fluctuated a lot. Resilience also could be connected to more efficient and better welfare for the animals.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, interesting. Thank you. Do we have any other questions in the audience? Flavio, go ahead.
Hello.
Hey, Flavio.
Hi, Renata. Thank you for presenting to us today.
No, I
Really
thank you.
appreciate it.
It was really nice to be here. So,
I have a question for you, maybe a comment. I think the graph that you showed for the heritability over time,
yes,
right? So those results were from the B splines, right? With 7 knots.
yes, bass lines with 7 notes.
Yeah. So um
Basically, we're gonna have a knot each 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Yeah. So I was reluctant to accept that biologically the behavior could be like you show us, right? That in terms of heritability to have a peaks and going back peaks. So I think that is kind of end up being a function of the splines, right? Because you
Yeah,
allow them to change, but biologically I cannot see how, for instance, genes would activate and
yeah,
being activated over time, like and have a change suddenly from week to the next.
yeah. That's
Yeah,
why we want to test multi-traits. Then we're gonna do multi-traits 2 weeks by 2 weeks. Like we
yeah.
have
But but but
multi-traits. Could
but
be some data processing also.
but how about you for the same data set you use Legendre polynomial, right?
Yes.
So and when you plot the heritability, how was the behavior?
So we didn't plot because we choose the model based on fit first, based on DIC, and then we
Hmm.
just make the second step that was the variance components
Hmm.
and so on for the best model that was the splines.
Yeah, yeah, but I think it would be very interesting to look to compare, no? Because
Yeah.
I don't know with this number of knots, I don't know, maybe the spline functions are better because they are kind of fitting some noise instead of fitting the biological biology of the trait.
Could be.
Uh,
And then,
yeah.
our idea is like continuing on this work and have other models because we test Legendre, but we didn't present in this paper the Legendre results. But the idea is fitting again other models and regression and having the same papers, multi-traits, and the same
Hmm.
paper, multi-trait repeatability models to see how is the differences in irritability and if there is some modeling noise in something like this as
Hmm.
you are pointing.
Yeah, I was kind of suspicious about like splines with too many knots and polynomials the very high degree.
Yeah, we start
Right.
with low degrees and increase the
Yeah.
degrees, but when we increase the degrees we like have a better fit, and also when we use heterogeneous variance also we get a better
Mhm.
fit.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, but I mean, Lejeune polynomials are very high degrees, right? Like fifth, sixth degree. So I am suspicious because we start to have a behavior that you cannot explain biologically, but it's increasing the fit, but probably because you are just capturing noise.
Nice.
Yeah. So I have another question. I think nobody else is the rant yet. For the work that you showed to us with the Nelor, that you have the gain on test, right? Uh, the test period. So
Yes,
which was the age that the animals started the test?
I have to check, but I think is after win. I think it's 200. It's kind of standardized. They have a limit of
Hmm.
age. I think it's from 208. I have to check it on the paper. I don't remember
So
by.
it's about the weaning.
It's after winning. It's
Yeah,
growing.
but yeah, it's not. It's kind of a little bit. Could be say a little bit after the weaning, but not that far from weaning.
Yes,
Uh,
not that far. Let's say
yeah.
it's from 18 to 20 months. 1.5 years. So it's not really near when 18 to 20.
Oh, okay,
months.
so yeah, so it's kind of older animals. Okay.
Yes,
No,
it's
yeah.
really. It's the average. It was between 18 and 20 months.
No,
of
I
age.
ask you this because you mentioned compensatory gain, right? So then immediately I thought it would be younger animals
No, but
because we see compensatory gain easily throughout all the post-weaning period. It affects, right?
yes.
But of course there's more compensatory gain at the beginning, just after the weaning, few months
Yeah, but
after the
if
weaning.
the animals like are in a really bad, because it can happen in Brazil, the animal can be like in pasture under really like
Yeah.
bad pasture conditions, and then it's moved to a facility that is like open food.
Yes. No, I think you are right to think about compensatory gain. It's just because when you mention compensatory gain, I thought younger animals immediately.
Yeah,
Because it's a very well-known problem in the genetic evaluation of
we want
in
to
beef cattle.
we want to investigate it deep because even though they are using averages in Brazil for the official genetic evaluation, we could have a big impact. If the period test is not enough to remove, like say, the noise and to get the animals prepared to be comparable, let's say in this way, and then we could have some bias and prejudice on the genetic evaluation of those animals.
Oh
So
yeah,
we
for
can
sure.
we want to understand better, like saw the data and get more detail. We will use also some data that we have from Viçosa to see how far the from experiments. Like we have several experiments in Viçosa, and sometimes the animals we know that they are like in bad nutrition before, and then we could see how long we see compensatory gain from those animals, but we have some previous data. Because for those animals that go to the test, sometimes it's tricky to have this previous situation.
Yeah. If you're going to the test and in the gain is the criteria, like weight gain, maybe you have to starve a little bit the animal before sending. I'm kidding. Because if the weight doesn't matter, it's just the gain, then if you starve the animal a little bit before sending to the test, you're going to have a higher gain. But anyway, it's just okay. Thanks, Renata. Good to see you.
Thank you, Flavio. Good to see you too.
Flavio. So that's all the time we have for today. So thank you again, Dr. Veroneze, for the very nice overview of feed efficiency and the great presentation. And thanks everyone that joined us today. We'll see you all next week and have a nice weekend.
Oh, thank you very much. So, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.